call the meeting to order. 31. Adequate notice of this meeting being held on June 16th has been provided in accordance with section 3D of chapter 231, the public laws of 1975, commonly known as the Sunshine Law. Please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Neal,
Here.
Nelson, here, Keith,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Here.
Randolph,
Here.
Broderick,
Here.
Decker,
Here.
Mooney.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion open for public comment.
Make the motion open to public comments.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any additional public comment? Motion to close public comment.
Motion to close public comments.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022.53 to appoint township planner for the year of 2022 using the fair and open process.
Make the motion and adopt that 2022.53.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022.54 tax resolution.
Make the motion and adopt that resolution.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022.55 issuance of the 2022-2023 plenary licenses.
Make the motion and adopt number 55.
Second. Any questions about it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022.56 approving application for Battenberg Quarry reclamation.
Make that motion.
Or second? Second. Do we have a final, is that on there? Tom, is the final dollar amount?
500 is listed.
Does anybody have any questions? Everybody comfortable with that number? And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Have a motion to pay all bills in the amount of $703,590.26.
Make a motion, pay the bills as read.
Second. All roll call vote,
Keith,
Yes.
Lindsay,
please. Yes.
Nelson. Yes. Randolph,
Yes.
Muir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Report visual engineer, Mr. Decker.
Just a couple things. Iron Bridge Road, the Carl's group has adjusted all the inlets. New guide rail was installed last week or week before, and tentatively we're scheduled for paving the week of June 27th. They're going to let Carl know when they get closer, but it shouldn't take them. They should be able to pave it that week.
Will it be all week?
It could be, because it's a difficult road. It's a difficult one. The other thing is that we put out RFQs to 3 or 4 well drillers for Heritage Park. We expect to get the quotes in next week. So we'll be able to report on that. We've had 3 out of 4 respond with questions. And so forth. We do have some interest. And we were also have the application for the DOT 2023 application submitted by Wednesday next week.
Excellent, thank you.
Just on that project, so the well is the big thing, but we also had the thing to sit in and a couple of benches.
Right.
Is there a time
What I
frame?
wanted to do is I wanted to get our quotes in for the well first
Perfect.
and see how much, because that's our primary goal. See how much out of the grant we're going to need for that, because that will help determine how many benches and the rest of the amenities.
It makes sense. Well, the prices are down.
You were thinking about doing shade trees around some of the benches too, right?
If money permitted or somebody wants to donate. coming in.
We did discuss it.
We might go back to the right booster and see
Yeah.
if there's some possibilities, there may be some individuals and businesses that will donate too, so I think Tom's right, we'll figure out the lion's share of the cost, figure out what's left, and then go out and make some asks once we have to. Good. Any other questions? Okay. Report of public safety official?
Yeah, I just wanted to come and introduce myself. Trooper Walsh will still be here, but my name's Trooper Barty. I'll also be attending the meetings from here on out, and nothing to report. But I'll answer any questions that anybody has. Questions for me.
Any questions from the committee?
Quick question. I know we're gonna be discussing some radar and speed limits and streets and everything else. The state police, do they have regular signs they can put, like some local PDs do? They have one they can hang on signs or?
I'm talking about when somebody's going down the street. To me,
Yeah,
so
actually, one they can hang
somebody,
on the sign, just sort of, you know.
yeah, I haven't seen them around, but I'll look into it. I'll come back and I'll let you know. Be a good idea. I know there's
Especially
some
with the
specific
changing
roads we get
Yeah,
complaints
some
about.
roads.
We try to put a trooper there, but yeah.
I'm just saying, 'cause that's why I asked before, the number of troopers, I know the large area cover, not officers, you know, it's kind of hard to.
Yeah,
That
usually
keep
when-
troopers in certain areas.
Yeah, so usually when somebody calls, we ask for a specific time. And usually they say, it's between 8 and 9 o'clock, there's a car that flies by. We try to put a trooper there, as often as we can, but it seems like every time we put somebody there, that doesn't happen.
There you go.
Yeah, we might get a guy here and there, but yeah, I'll look into that and I'll let you know.
Okay.
If we can do something like that.
Thank you.
I'll just share it for residents, because since you're here to talk about it, we had a resident complain about Stats Road, and they took some video, but still weren't able to get a license plate number, so ideally, if you get
Was it just a speeding car?
it was a speeding car, and actually, I connected them with Trooper Walsh to figure out a time, and it was usually around school bus time, but I think, if you can get some sort of identifier, I'm just putting this out here for residents, since we get a little bit of a larger audience with the video, get some sort of identifier, like license plate, would be ideal to share.
Yeah, or just the time that, cars are going down, if it's rush hour and then it's people trying to get to the highway, we have no problem putting a trooper down there for the hour or 2 hours. You got that traffic going.
Yeah, like I said, we've done that in the past, and if you guys sit there for a few days, then it gives us like 6 weeks of calm usually, and then we figure it out, but it does help just having the presence, so.
Yeah, so if there's any complaints or anything, just relay them to me or Trooper Walsh, we'll see what we can do, putting troopers down there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. You're welcome to stay if not, obviously.
Yeah. I got
Thank you. Under all business, moving right on, as we were saying, discussion of the Tunnel Road speed limit changes. Can I have a motion to open?
Make a motion open.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See any- Are there any residents on the call from Tunnel Road online?
Yes. It's Shauna.
Can you just state your name? Actually, well, can you state your name and address?
Shauna Morrison, and it's 350 Tunnel Road.
Okay. So the discussion was, I'll just preface it, and then if you have questions or discussion, was that, which was brought to our attention, really, I guess, the end of 2020 and through 2021, we did 2 speed studies. There had been 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs posted on the roads. Those were done by somebody, we don't know who. We had discussions all the way back in 2018, even that we knew about them, and decided to leave them there as a deterrent, knowing that they were not enforceable. And we had more residents complain about the speed limit, and in talking with our state police representatives, they needed an ordinance to follow. So the road had been determined a rural road, which is by statute 50 miles an hour. The speed studies indicated that it should be reduced to 40 from Route 579 to the 78 overpass, and 35 from 78 to 173. So not all the residents, some of the residents have been involved in that process and understood the process at least. I think that they would like to see lower speed limits, but we're trying to do our best. And right now we have something at least that's enforceable. And so we're trying to figure out if there's any other alternatives to bring those speed limits even lower. But so sorry to take the time, but if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, please do so at this time.
I have a problem. Well, I want to say that I had a stroke, so my speech isn't very clear. So I understand that, but I wanted a Hail Mary pass on the speed limit signs, and I thought we had one, but I don't know if we do or not. But I wanted to know how the engineer determines how, what, if we're a residential street or not. Because my understanding is if it's a residential street, it's 25, right?
It is if it qualifies.
If it qualifies, and I'm Tom Decker, I'm the township engineer. The way that this study was done is Go Hunterdon provides a service to municipalities where they will put out the speed monitoring signs. You probably saw it out there for a while last summer, where it records what the actual speeds that people are traveling are at. They tabulate that, and per the regulations, the way that the speed limit is determined from a speed study is the speed limit can be set at the 85th percentile of what people drive the road. And in the case of Tunnel Road, we had a 85th percentile on the section from 579 to 78 of 43 miles an hour, which means that 85% of the people that travel on Tunnel Road travel at 43 miles an hour. And then on the other section, the percentile was at 38 miles an hour. We're able to set the speed within 5 miles an hour of that 85th percentile. So we went the conservative route, and we went from 43 miles an hour to 40, and we went from 38 miles an hour to 35. And my understanding from previous conversations with the state police is that there's not, Tunnel Road has not been a high accident road. And there are other things that you consider when you're looking at the criteria for residential and so forth, one of which is accident history, you know, the density of the housing, you know, where you have high density housing, 25 miles an hour is appropriate. When you're on a country road, it gets a little bit more difficult. And that's why we do the speed study. I will say that, you know, for example, in the township ordinance, section 143-31, Mine Road is 40 miles an hour. And, you know, if you were looking at
Parts of it, right?
residential, it's 25 miles an hour from 173 to Fox Farm Road. And then from Fox Farm Road all the way to Charlestown, it's 40 miles an hour. So if we were going to draw a comparison, that would be a very close comparison to what we have on top. So that's where, as the mayor had mentioned before, the 25 miles an hour was not enforceable before. And the 35 and 40 miles an hour is actually in keeping with what people are driving the road at this time. So that's how the speed study was done. Unfortunately, we can't just set it. We need to have the numbers to support it, and this is what supported it.
There's also state statute that regulates.
Yeah, there's state statute. The state statute, you know, it talks about, you know, 25 miles an hour in business and residential districts, 35 miles an hour in suburban business or residential districts. And then you get into the 50 mile an hour on a rural road. And I believe the enforcement has been at 50 miles an hour. So if anything, while it's not 25 miles an hour, we're now at least at a lower speed limit on there that is enforceable.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Sure, if you just state your name and address, please.
Bill Hamilton, 365 Tunnel Road. The engineer cites the fact that the study said that folks on the road were going 43 miles an hour. I've been on Tunnel Road now for 3 years. Since I've been here, the posted speed limit agreed wasn't enforceable, 25 miles an hour. The folks saw that and we're still going 43. We bump it to 40, people are gonna be going 55. And this is a very windy, hilly, a lot of hidden driveways on this road. Folks with disabilities can't get to their mailbox on the other side of the road. I mean, it's just, to me, it just doesn't make sense. I'm baffled. If it's enforceable at 40, at 25, at 40, we don't have anybody on this road. And I get it. I mean, these guys got a lot of more important things to do this evening, look for speeders on Tunnel Road. But, we couldn't enforce it at 25, but nobody tried. We're not gonna be able to force it at 40 because nobody can be here to do it either. So I don't understand the logic.
I would ask if we can go and try some enforcement. The trooper is here, and I think ideally, if we can identify times, like I travel on the road quite a bit. I know residents that live there walk. I see people walking on the road quite a bit. But if we can identify times that it seems like the speeding is worse, I'm sure we can have a commitment from our state police to be there and start these enforcement efforts and see if it does calm some of the traffic. So, the first step is lowering the speed limit, and we've made no attempts at enforcement at this point. And I think that is obviously a critical part of having people follow the speed limit and slow down. So we will continue to look to see where, I wish we could choose speed limits, but we're bound by the state Department of Transportation and their regulations. So we'll continue to work with the engineer and our attorney to see if we can figure out ways to lower it. But until that point, if I could ask for a few weeks of patrol and enforcement, I think we would see some reduction and some level of comfort on that road. But ideally, it'd be most effective if you could reach out to me and let me know. My email is on the township website. My phone number, I think, is on there also. It's 908-222-6158. You can text or call me and let me know what times you think it's worse, and we'll have the state police out there to start that enforcement and see if that helps.
Thank you, Mayor. I would offer my driveway. They can sit in my driveway. It's mornings during rush hour and the afternoon during rush hours. And the other thing I would like to see enforced is the weight limit. I mean, we have tractor trailers on this road. We have overweight trucks on this road. I don't know where they're cutting through to. I gotta be honest with you. It's an 8-mile road. I don't know what they're doing, saving a minute and a half. I will reach out to you, email and see if we can't set something up.
Okay, so we'll look at those. It's mostly the afternoon rush hour more than morning, do you feel?
It's hard to say. I mean, you can sit there and pick the school buses too. I mean, the school buses are going crazy on this road.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
I also have to say the middle of the night.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
So I think we said before, in that 25 speed limit sign, I believe there's only one sign at the very beginning. I don't know if it's the other one. But that not being enforceable, the state police had no ability to enforce that. We got the.
Okay, go ahead and comment to say on the 25-mile-an-hour signs. We're up here prior to 1980, and it wasn't just an individual that stuck it up. It was a township actually that installed them at some point. Okay, whether they're legal or not legal, it was not just an individual that posted.
Right, I'm not saying it was, I'm just saying.
Look to the road. Go ahead.
Hello?
Oh, I'm losing it here.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
This is Debbie Zeno. We're at 356 Tunnel Road. We've been here for 40 years, and there were township posted signs of 25 miles an hour at both ends of the road. Maybe they were legal, but at least that slowed people down a little bit. And we would like to see those signs, which were posted by the township, replaced with 25 or worst case, 35 miles per hour at the 579 to 78 and 25 miles an hour from 78 to 173. I mean, the lower portion of Tunnel Road is definitely a high density residential area, and that should be a maximum of 25 miles per hour.
Until we can figure out how we can do that, we're gonna ask for some enforcement and see how that changes things, and then we'll work on seeing what else we can do.
Can I ask why, if it's a state law and the density of driveways is a consideration, why Sweet Hollow has 25 and we don't?
Alexandria.
That's Alexandria.
I know that's Alexandria, but if it's a state-run thing, why is they're Alexandria allowed 25 and we're not?
I don't know if that's what it's posted. I don't know if they have the same type of.
That's not a logical explanation. If it's, we have as many, I'm sure, as many driveways on Tunnel Road as they do in Alexandria on Sweet Valley, right? And if it's the state thing, I ask because I want to know why they can have it and we can't.
And I apologize, I know you did reach out to me about that road, I didn't get a chance to look it up. I'm trying to find the ordinance now, because if it is official, it'll be in their ordinance book, because I was at the Union Township meeting last night, and there were some issues about speed limits, and I was checking their ordinances too. So we're gonna see if we can find their ordinance, and if it's official, we'll find out and see if there's some other circumstance that may have.
Right, it could have been, they could have done a speed study there as well, and their speed study came back with lower numbers. Or
It's a flat road. It's not a hill like this road.
Yeah, yeah. Bill, I agree with you.
So one
Thank you.
of the things they have is, doesn't say what year. but When was that road built? Over
Sweet Hollow?
there? Yeah.
He said that.
One of the ordinance talks about new residential streets goes at 25 an hour. speed limit.
No, it's an older road.
I wasn't sure if I asked.
And actually, I'm looking at the Alexandria ordinance, their code right now online. And they have weight limit ordinances, but they do not, I cannot find a speed limit ordinance, so. We can reach out to Alexandria, but based on what their code book states, then that's probably an erroneous sign also over on Sweet Hollow,
So Tom,
or not enforceable.
I've got a question for Tom Paul.
Okay.
So we've got the speed study, tells us the average speed of the road is probably 50/50 or maybe a little bit off on mostly residents, or at least part of the time, commuters, other parts of the time, the windows. And the study just gives us that bulk, so that's fine. And we're working with what the motorists are defining as acceptable to them to actually operate on that road. And since it's low accident, while not the right numbers for the residents, mechanically, those vehicles are operating in a range that makes it viable. Now we go back to the state law. In the absence of putting up a lot of signs, because towns didn't have them, you had two criteria. 50-mile-per-hour zone was rural, and it was a default. If there was no posted speed limit, and it was wide open, just farms, pastures, trees, whatever.
That's not true. That is not true.
Hang on, that's the default of the state when it comes to the 50 or the 25, the very basic criteria. What I'm getting at is, if there's sections of the road where the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit is more consistent with that default because of, say, the high density, lower section of Tunnel Road, where you have 3-4 houses close together and you have a certain amount of frontage that's clearly residential and risky, there may be a window where at least sections of it we can use the state standard as
No, he's wrong.
25. The other areas may default to those other options, and we'll have to work through them. But working off of what those state standards, in the absence of any other signs designating what the zone should be lawfully, there may be a window for us.
I can't hear him, Debbie, so I don't know what the hell he's saying.
So what we're saying is we're gonna investigate whether the lower portion of Tunnel Road would qualify as residential based on criteria by the state. But I think the upper portion still would have to, at this point, remain at 40 miles an hour. And I think that's probably where the most concern is, because again, I travel quite a bit. I don't see too many people speeding in that lower portion. I do see some commercial vehicles that probably shouldn't be there, but I don't see too much speeding. But if we can patrol the 579 to 78 overpass during rush hour and enforce the 40 miles an hour.
Excuse me,
Significant change.
the upper portion of Tunnel Road is zoned as mountain residential. It is a residential area.
Unfortunately, our designation, that's like a building code, not for the road. So like, not residential, tells you what the property can do.
So one of the criteria is low accident. So it seems to me we're trying our best to get to as many accidents as we can by
Yeah.
raising the speed limits. We're going to lower it down. It seems idiotic to me. It really does. I'm baffled. I'm absolutely.
Part of the criteria to change it is there's density of driveways, there's accident reports, there's multiple things that contribute to the ability to change those.
Try to
There
get out of my driveway in the morning. You'll see.
have been accidents on Upper Tunnel Road. I've seen cars go off the right-hand side heading south.
We got animals. We have farm animals. We have deer. We have fox. They're all running out in front of the cars.
So I think this place to start would be the enforcement with our state police.
Those guys are busy. They got things to do.
They're committed to us. I'm looking at Truth Lombardi now, and they've done this for us on other roads. It's not unique to Tunnel Road. We've done this for many years on various roads, and the enforcement really does help. I've seen it help. I've seen it last quite some time. And unfortunately, like I said, it's not unique to Tunnel Road as far as speeding, reckless driving. We've had people pass school buses while they're stopped on other roads, and the state police have been very helpful in going out and addressing those and making sure that it doesn't.
Are they considered speed cameras on Tunnel Road?
Sorry?
Are they considered speed cameras on Tunnel Road? To enforce the limit?
Yeah, they're not enforceable in New Jersey either.
Wow.
Do speed bumps?
There you go. That's a good point.
Yeah, maybe.
That requires an engineering study.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
what doesn't?
while we respect your situation on Tunnel Road, it's not unique to Tunnel Road, and we've had discussions about speed bumps on other roads. And it's just not suitable for plowing, for road maintenance, for engineering, for drainage. There's a multitude of problems. Hampton most recently tried them out and ended up removing them relatively quickly. So I would ask, I'm always available to further discuss. I know somebody reached out by email.
The resident said we can use his driveway.
Yeah, yes, who said, it's Bill, you stated that we could use your driveway?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
That was 365?
That's correct.
365, Tom.
The trooper just asking Bill.
Yeah, Trooper Lombardi is asking, so they will be out there.
That's fine, thank you.
Like I said, I'm here, we'll stay in communication, some of us have been emailing back and forth. But let's start with enforcement and see where it goes and keep this conversation open.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. A motion to close this discussion?
Make a motion to close discussion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And thank you for those on the road joining us for the discussion. I appreciate that.
I'm gonna go watch the Yankees win again.
Enjoy. Our next discussion is more of an update, just so we can solidify it. We had Mr. Huff join us at the last meeting for a food license fee exemption request with Central Valley Farm. We have a motion to open for this discussion.
Make a motion open for discussion.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. As we don't need to codify it, just really to explain it, put it on the record. We reached out to the county health inspector, and he had stated that if the township deems it to be exempt and not charge a fee, the county will still come out and do their inspection, but will not bill the township. So that has been our decision on this food license. So we don't have to take any action. I would say it's an operational thing that we're doing through the clerk's office. Just wanted to clarify since Mr. Huff is here. So he's been informed already. Lou?
Yes, I spoke with him already and I guess reviewed some of the permit processing online. Seems several of the other farms, they haven't been getting charged in town from the state. So yeah, it seems to all line with some of the ones that were there.
Okay. So that's good. I want to thank the county for clarifying and offering that for us. So a motion to close.
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
New discussions, status of the Leap Farmhouse, motion to open.
Motion open.
Second.
So, probably back in 2018, the township acquired, the Fleet Farm, with a cadre of barns and a farmhouse. Most interesting was a 1760 barn that we hoped to save. I reiterate again, we had some grant process, a grant in place, and unfortunately, the process has been not followed through, and we lost that barn. We've lost other barns, but we are left with the farmhouse. We think there's some opportunities for the township, and but it's at the point that we need to discuss how to at least temporarily stabilize, so that there's no additional significant cost to the township. Again, my intent all along was to always maintain this property through state grants. That's why we're trying to get it on the national register. It'll be more difficult without that barn. But Deputy Mayor Nelson has spent some time with our DPW supervisor. I've been part of the conversations, but not all, so I'm going to turn it over to.
Well, yeah, basically the status of the house is deteriorating rapidly. There's 2 holes that have opened up in the slate roof. Once a slate roof goes, they go quickly, even though they tend to last longer than asphalt roofs. So we would need to at least have a roofer come in and at least somehow patch up those roofs so that there's not as much water damage. Yes, Carl Roth and I did go into the house back in March. There is water damage in the home. The foundation looks to be okay. The house is I think could be saved, but it would take money, and we would need an architect to go in there and to see how the bones really are. There's a family of raccoons living in it, and as anybody knows, animals can wreak havoc in a home. And they are definitely wreaking havoc on some of the floorboards. Their droppings are starting to really eat through. There's mold in the house, but there's a beautiful fireplace. I had a vision of it to be maybe a local museum, a place where maybe local musicians could come. You could fit maybe, I'd have to look at the health codes, but 25 people in there for a weekend concert, things like that was always my vision. But if we don't do anything soon, the house is just going to go the way of the barns. It's going to have to, because it's rapidly becoming unstable. Especially if those holes are allowed to remain. So the discussion is, do we want to save the house, I guess, at all at this point? If we do, should we solicit some quotes to see what it would take to at least stabilize it for the short term before we decide? So
What's the house?
it's been added on to the main part of the oldest part of the home, which is more the horizontal part, I think dates back to the late 1700s, early 1800s. The taller part of the home, there's conflicting data on it. Some people say it's the late 1800s, early 1900s. Other people say no, 1950, and that there's no significant historical to that part of the home. But it doesn't matter, they're attached. It's not like you're going to want to take one part of it down and the other, and that's the side that also has more room. It has a nice big living room.
This original portion of the house, I believe, is there. I think from what I've gathered, there's about 5 homes in town that are all the same.
Yeah,
Built
this is the
between
interesting.
like 1790 and 1820-ish.
Right.
They have a similar fireplace that's been maintained. Some of it's been removed from a few, but it's the same basic kind of square with a large fireplace. The addition is what it is. Again, it's tough after that. The barn was really key, but we have the cemetery in the park with Captain Daniel Bleak, who was a Revolutionary War soldier. We did an Eagle Scout project, restore that. I believe it was 2016 or 17. And so this house is part of the Bleak family and part of that heritage for Bethlehem Township. So it'd be nice to save some of that, and I think it could all be a cultural resource.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
again, from my standpoint, I'd like to take advantage of outside grant opportunities to do these things, but the initial stabilization would have to come from here in the township. And whether that's as simple as temporarily covering the roof, looking at Carl with a tarp, and then eventually figuring out what's appropriate from there. But
You said we had a grant to save these?
we had a grant from the New Jersey Historic Commission to do the research to get a certificate of eligibility for the historic trust for the entire farm. And then once you have that, you can apply for state historic trust grants. And so I applied for that, and I planned on finishing it or should have been done in 2020. It was delayed with the pandemic, but eventually the consultant was asked to leave the property. And so it was never completed.
Well,
So it's done, the barn is collapsed, which was.
did we have to put something with the property?
An official in the township asked the person to leave. Yes, not we. Former elected official asked the person to leave. So, yeah, my theme this year is, we're moving forward,
No, I know.
figure out what's best
I
to,
understand.
but it's an unfortunate loss. The barn is really the key resource for that registry, so I'm not sure if the house would qualify on its own, especially after the loss of the barn, but with the barn there, again, the intent was to have the historic trust to apply. We should have been in the process this year, having a trust grant for stabilization on the barn, but we lost it this winter in the snow. So now the house is the only salvageable resource, and
I mean, it's a legacy of the town. You know, and at the very least, from the barn, we saved the cupola. So
yes,
hopefully we will be able to somehow refurbish that.
yes, we're gonna find some way to and share that with residents too.
Yeah, figure out. So, again, I don't know what discussions we want to have tonight on it, sooner the better, but at least like to start that process of what we should be doing with that home.
So, Paul, on that grant that you're mentioning, I'm not aware of it or any conversation with the person in particular. If you got that paperwork, because that might be something that can be resurrected.
I can reach back out to the state and see if they're willing to do it. I know the consultant may not be willing to come back, but we'll see.
And then the historical society would probably be involved.
Yes.
They were involved in this. It was actually when I wrote that grant, it was the first hybrid municipal historic society grant. It was our historic society, its own separate 501c3. But when you get to a commission and trust grant, you have to have a budget of $100,000, which our local society does not. So I asked if they could be considered under the umbrella of the municipality. And I will say that the historic commission actually, after reviewing that, had changed their regulations so that other towns with smaller historic societies can do the same thing. So I was very proud of that. Unfortunately, we were the ones who changed the regulation and it didn't work here. But again, the barn is a big disappointment. But we have the house, and so we need to see what we want to do. I think the question is, we're not going to solve it tonight, but we want to see, is it worth at least, this is my suggestion, at least tarping the roof. And I'm looking at Tom, I don't know, we talked about having somebody from your office maybe, at least, and I don't know if you could give us an idea of cost, just to make sure that the foundation, and I understand there may be some asbestos remediation, if we get an idea of what the costs are, and then maybe make a more educated decision.
That was my plan for tonight, to see what would be the beginnings of, you know, at least stabilizing it for the short term, whether we decide to take it down or not. I'm also, you know, people go back there, you know, despite the keep out signs, you know, I don't want it to be unsafe. That porch is becoming unsafe. We boarded up the windows because people were throwing rocks through it, and, you know,
No, I can talk. to
it's a hazard.
Our structural guys are actually out of Phillipsburg office. So for them to stop by and take a look shouldn't be too much. So at least give it an initial assessment.
Like, I'm not gonna hold you to it, but we always do like a not to exceed, like, what do you think it would be around for them to come out?
For them to come out from there, a few $100, you know, to just give an initial, you know, look, see and say, yeah, it's worth pursuing.
So what I'm just gonna, I'll make the motion, and then next, we make a motion to allow our engineering firm to come out to do a basic assessment, not to exceed $500, so we can make a more educated decision on this at a future meeting.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah,
But
that's
we need
fine.
a roll call.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, I
yes.
apologize, yes.
yes,
Lindsay,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Randall,
Yes.
you.
Yes,
Thank you.
motion carries, thank you. A motion to close?
Make a motion closed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Our next discussion item is the tree ordinance. I have a motion open.
Make a motion open.
Second.
So I'm going to give a quick preference and then again, turn it over to Deputy Mayor Nelson. So our tree ordinance, I think, has been part of our history for a good solid 12 years at this point, with no real resolution, and it's coming back to us. So the way that it's on the agenda tonight, I'm gonna say is not an official capacity yet. The planning board has spent quite some time with this. But typically, the planning board would send it up to us, we would make comments, we send it back. Then they decide that it is not in conformance with our master plan and send it back to us to actually be an ordinance at that point. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to start to go through this. They've spent quite a bit of time on the ordinance, I will say. This does not, I want to preface too, this does not necessarily solve the clear cutting issues that we've discussed in previous years.
It brings awareness.
It brings awareness to it, and there are some tools, but it does not completely solve it. It does, Bethlehem Township is a town with steep slopes, so it does protect neighbors and areas of steep slope from significant runoff or erosion damage. It also creates some awareness as we have the ash borer and the lanternfly and having residents address trees that are unhealthy. I believe it's a comment that's fairly liberal for what it is. And again, I just want to point out, this isn't a comment of in favor or against, it's more towards our planning board. They have a subcommittee and they've spent quite a bit of time on this. It had been given to the Highlands Commission, Council, and the Highlands Council has reviewed it and had positive comments on it. They helped designate some of the native species that are in here to replant for the trees that are removed. We also had at least one arborist come to a meeting and share with the planning board. So this is not a document that is taken lightly that's come back up to us. So that's my preface. But as our land use coordinator, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Nelson for further direction.
You basically said most of, what the planning board has gone through. It also encourages, basically it's saying you can take five trees down, no questions asked. You get to the sixth tree, then there's some gradation going up in terms of fees that would be required to take trees down beyond that. The preface would be that the trees would have to be healthy, a certain caliber, which is the width of the tree, that would be required for the permits. Obviously, sick and dying trees, non-native trees, specifically the tree of heaven, which is a particular nuisance in this area, and the favorite food of the lanternfly. It's one of the reasons why they're so prolific in this area. So all of that can come down, doesn't matter. It's really just when you're taking down the healthy larger trees, the mature trees in town, that the permits and the fees would start to kick in. That was the main crux and the main debate of this ordinance that went on for years and years, is what was the optimum, like, could it be 5 trees, could it be 10? Well, and they went round and round, and then as the native and non-invasive and non-native species started proliferating, and then all of that just started adding in, which is why this ordinance took forever. And I've only been involved in it for maybe 6 of those 12 years. And I know the document inside and out. So that's the basic premise of the ordinance, is to bring awareness to the fact that there's, an invasive problem. Everybody knows about the ash tree problem. We all know how that's been wreaking havoc. And please, township, please take those down. The township's never going to charge you for something like that. So that's a basic crux. And to bring awareness to the clear cutting. No, it doesn't solve it entirely, but it does bring awareness to some people who might want to think twice about when they're starting to do things like that.
I'm going to share very much after 20 years on the land use boards here in Bethlehem Township, I'm still very much a property rights person. You should be able to do what you want to do with your own land, especially here in Bethlehem Township. But I will say that this ordinance, the way it's written, based on if you look at the size of the trees, whether they're healthy or not, whether they're native or not, this really impacts the most extreme examples if somebody was to impact the surrounding properties around them. So anytime you create an ordinance and land use is to really protect those around you. And this does that in the least invasive manner, in my opinion, at this point. It's really addressing those instances where significant tree removal will impact the surrounding properties, not trying to impede residents from taking down trees, clearing and maintaining their properties in ways that they see fit based on the inappropriate tree that may already be growing there. That's just my preface on it. And again, these are comments that they're going to go back to the planning board. So that's the point here. So I want everybody in the committee to share, and we can even open this to the public.
I know the attorney, one of the questions I have is a lot of residents in town have a high density tree area. Myself, I wanted the solar panels on my roof. And I was told by the companies, I had to take down at least 25 trees just to get the proper view. Now I'm paying all these fees just to try to go solar panels. I just had my septic system redone, the whole leach field, I had to take down 8 trees that are on the leach field. So I'm gonna get charged to take down trees that are on the leach field. That's the, that's little issues there. I have 7 acres of solid trees in my property. So I'm thinking 8 on my leach field. I know he had sent, mayor, sorry, give you a promotion. The attorney has sent, I guess, a request in regards to also, we have other residents in town that taking down a tree is expensive. And he had recommended some.
Yeah, so most towns, they require or allow a hardship waiver that's based upon, 1.5 to 2.5% of the total value of the project. I'm just involved in Reddington Township with a similar situation. A gentleman owns a large wooded lot, and the tree replacement value is $150,000, which I think perhaps would stifle single-family residential buildings to be put into town, and I'm not sure that's desirable. So I would suggest a hardship waiver that caps that fee. I think I had suggested 1.5%.
You said it was.
Well, to your knowledge, if this had been in place 20 years ago, were there any events that this would have actually impacted? Because after looking at all the exemptions, it seems even properties that are critical slope, a lot of those properties are actually on bigger tracts, or part of bigger tracts of land. So they're already in the farming practices or forestry practices. So I'm just curious, would this, if it had been in place, is there anywhere in town that would have affected them to the betterment of the towns, from a positive perspective?
Without going back through the planning board, I couldn't give you the exact
Like-
properties, but I'll say, I believe there were 2 instances where this probably would have been helpful. One was the expansion of a residence on a steep slope. And then the other was actually, it was a solar project that, and both I think were constructed because this didn't exist, but one of those ended up having erosion issues that impacted other houses down below.
That is something, if you're making notes, that would be, at least for context purposes. Then I was looking at, since it does mention historic trees, landmark trees, trees that are new, do we have any in town?
None designated,
Anything
but
that's,
no.
or is that a question we could throw to, say, the historical society?
Yeah,
or
there might
county?
be something. Yes.
Because we might have something that we just don't know about. Then you talk about what Paul was saying as far as the values. I noticed way in the back is the violations component where the judge has the option between, for somebody that's within this, and it holds up to court muster, that it's $1,000 for the violation itself, or $1,000 per tree. It's kind of a wide range that can go in all different directions. Worst case scenario, folks.
I'm sorry,
There are change
page
orders. What's that?
Okay, Joe.
That's all the way in the back.
A violation of penalties.
Yeah,
H.
that's been complicated too.
Yeah, these are always, I will say, again, every ordinance, just about every ordinance probably has a similar violation, so that we don't read it until we're introducing it or amending it. And
That's what we're kicking around.
yeah, and like I say, I think all of us, I don't want to speak for our committee, but at least since I've been around, I think the intent with zoning has not ever been to be punitive. It's there so that people can really consider, oh, I should do this. But we send our zoning officer out only if there's a complaint, and I, at least from my perspective, I always ask him to please try to remediate before we start issuing fines. And, we have the ability here, although the executive branch does not interact with our judicial, our court is here, and you've worked with them the past 2 years, and then I've worked with them. Our court also is not very punitive here, so this gives you a maximum in case somebody decides to just blatantly say, I don't care about this, and throw it out. But if somebody is really trying to do something correctly and is working with us, the intent is not to start fining $1,000 per
No, I look at it, and if you look at worst case scenarios, just so you can you can hedge against it or be able to answer those questions if somebody else picks up on it. The last thing that I looked at was that tree loss mitigation fund. If, say like, as Paul's describing, where he's taking these trees down, so he can put the solar in, and he's not in a position to be able to put any more trees as replacements, even though the ordinance would suggest to require that. $300 a pop for the number of trees that he'd have to find a home for, and this is a default for that. And I have no idea what, I mean.
We kicked that around on planning board a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly, it didn't have to necessarily be like right where it was.
No, just we.
It could be, you know, we even talked about having people do it down in the park.
Right.
Yeah, you know,
I was just looking at
doesn't
that.
have to be,
This has a fee attached
Yeah.
per tree that's not actually. placed.
right.
I'm
And
just throwing this out.
no, I'm
there
just
for the
saying to address, because
conversation.
I completely agree, because it'd be like, yeah, where are you gonna put it? I forget what it's like 3 trees per everyone taken down. Yeah, you can't put that all in, like, say, a property,
Right,
so that's why we
He
said, you
takes
know,
8 trees down, he doesn't want them, no, that's 20.
24 trees, yeah.
Follow, just black and white at this, 24 trees, and I suggested 300 a pop, the way it's structured.
Well, the other thing you can, to think of, there are ways around this, like the county gives away free trees. They give away 5 free trees every year. There's various programs where you can get, you know, trees where you're not paying for them, and I understand about the fees. Again, I think to Paul's point, I don't really know if we would go around looking for things like that. But it'd be encouraging, you know, to, you know, think about the replacement of what we're doing. Replanting the native trees versus letting the invasives take over, which happens very easily. I mean, they just come.
My
So-
concern is you say here, maybe right now, we know, but who's to say 2 years down the road, if this were to pass. I come from a town where the zoning officers are walking on people's property, maybe a flashlight and camera, taking pictures of violations. How do we know? Okay, maybe right now, 10 years, 15 years up the road, we may have something like that where
Then I would
you
suggest
have a
that,
family of 5 kids, and, you know, all of a sudden they're being told they owe, they said $300 a tree, say 10 trees.
and I bet if you were to get enough resident complaints, I mean, ordinances are a living document.
Yeah.
You could, you know, amend it with the times, because this has been amended with the times from its original
Yeah,
version.
like you're saying, this doesn't like, and again, I've only been involved
Mhm.
about 11 years
Yeah,
now.
right.
So, but like any ordinance, like when we go through, like we've adjusted our septic ordinance. Like you said, that like for people going, these come from residents, from applications, from violations or questions from zoning. So it is, this wasn't like concocted in somebody's head who wanted to.
So I'm not saying I'm against the ordinance or anything.
No,
I think
no.
that there's some minor details in here that we maybe need to adjust, and as our attorney had recommended, there may be, especially on the financial side of it for the residents. And I don't think we're a town full of millionaires that can afford to take down trees left and right. I think for the most part, most of our residents, you know, if they have to take down 10 trees or pay fines.
Yeah.
It's gonna be financially difficult for them. Especially if, you know, you have fences put in, or you set the septic system, whatever kind of work.
I agree, and I know Art was, you know, sitting around town and talking to you about trees, and I've talked to people about trees. You're right, I found like when I talk to people about this, they're like, oh, I took 3 trees down last year and I think 3 down this year, because people can't afford to use as much as $1,000 a tree for a decent sized tree in this area. So if people aren't, I don't think you're gonna see too many people exceeding the 5. Again, this was to protect for some of those more extreme examples that would have negative impacts on the surrounding properties. I really do like the hardship waiver. And so I think, you know, we'll take a look at that. We'll put in a note about the penalties and fines, but like you said, it could be any other committee, so we should look at it, but I will say most of our ordinances, you know, say like $1,000 a day fine, and I don't think we've done that at any certain point. We always try to work with the resident when they do that, so. So with the hardship waiver, we'll look at the penalties and fines, we'll look at the tree fund.
Off-site tree mitigation.
The off-site
It's not uncommon for municipalities to allow a developer to, generally with the engineer and the planner, just go around town and pick spots for specimen trees to be
It's always
planted.
the philosophy of deferring high density housing to an urban area, and paying a fee for them to take on those requirements.
So I think the key for the key for tonight would be that, you know, if the majority of the committee all said this is horrible, we don't want to even explore this, we just say, okay, that's it. But I think it seems like we're open to it. Sending it back with these comments to the planning board, and then they can make these adjustments, and then send it up to us as an actual ordinance, and we can follow the process then. I'm not gonna ask for a vote as to whether you're gonna vote for the ordinance or not tonight, unless.
I agree, still needs some more work and adjustments, but, certain areas still want to be up for taking it back to them to adjust. It's my personal opinion.
Steve, do you have any input or have been able to hear us clear enough? Steve Keefe, are you still there?
Yeah, it keeps coming in and out.
Yeah. Do you have any comments or anything you'd like to add about the tree ordinance?
I think Judy, actually, I think I heard her correctly about the trees. There are different townships that actually offer free saplings. And I actually asked one of the townships, I might have been Alexandria or Clinton, if they could send Christie information. I don't think she ever got it, but I'd actually like for our township to participate in that. You get free saplings and the Environmental Commission, hands them out on a certain Saturday. So if that's possible, and that would help with the tree ordinance too, everybody would get free trees.
Okay,
That's a
yeah,
great idea too.
yep. Thank you.
So what I'll probably do is I'll reach out to the Alexandria Township clerk and ask her for more of that information. I asked her to do it, I think, a couple of years ago, because I usually get the saplings every year.
Yeah, I usually do too. I did it this year.
Excellent.
So I can get back
Yeah,
and
thanks.
get information about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me know.
A motion to close discussion?
Make a motion to close discussion on tree ordinance.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll send this back, put some notes, we'll get the minutes to the planning board. Sure, your motion to open for public comment on the tree ordinance,
Motion to open up public comment.
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We got two in the audience in person start, so I don't see anybody online yet, so.
Peter Berger, 134 Blackbrook Road, and I manage a woodlot. I would like to see something in there that gives our government a heads up prior to harvesting, to give our preservation people, say 30 days, maybe, to get in touch with the owner and make them an offer to preserve it rather than harvest it. What has turned me off is the large harvest that went on Hackett.
Mhm.
And there was a large harvest on Blackbrook also, which was a little shaky, but I see the lot is now for sale. That's a different story. But still, I think that our committee or the planning board should be alerted. Okay, 30 days, we're gonna harvest lot and block, whatever. And give the preservation people time to talk to the owner. Maybe they can make an offer that would stop the harvest really and preserve it. And it doesn't have to be a fee. I mean, I guess you could set some kind of thing if they don't do it, maybe some kind of fine. But just a 30-day window. And the forester comes to you and discusses it, and then the forester does all the setup and gets the guy to harvest it. It's all a big plan. And at that point, he should alert us. That's what I would like to see to preserve our beautiful township. Thank you.
So why don't we put, I like that idea, we'll ask our planning board attorneys, but Mr. Godwin, if you feel like jumping in, but if you look at exemptions, it says permits not required for the following activities. And number 7, removal of any trees under the farm, documented protection of rights of the farm, which would include the woodland and forest stewardship plan. We add to that, while you have that plan, if we're legally allowed to do it, you must still notify, you may not need a permit, but must still notify the township of your harvest.
Well, there's two different plans you can get, stewardship and then the regular.
Yeah, they're both
forestry
in
plan.
the same number here, 7. So,
Okay. Just a heads up. We're gonna do this. And maybe try to preserve
if there's no legal reason not to, I think it's a great idea.
it. I think so too. It might suppress it just a little bit, those big 100-acre and 40-acre harvesting deals, no good. It's all our wonderful township.
Thank you.
There you go.
In Apple, federal station line. Mr. Mayor, you said that in that harvesting, there was like 5 trees you can take out?
Correct. 5
Is there a time frame? Is that the right thing you want to?
Per year.
Year?
5 per year.
For you.
5 per year? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions in the room? Any questions online? Teresa Gunn?
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have 2 questions. My first one is about,
Sorry, just state your address.
oh, sorry, Fox Farm Road. Sorry, 12 Kensington Court. I have a question about the activity at the abandoned quarry on 173. I'm not sure if they're doing some kind of truck depot or a truck rest stop, but there's dozens of truck trailers on the residential portion of the property. So I'm wondering, are they applying for some new use? What's going on?
We can answer that question in public comment. This was just public comment for the tree ordinance right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
Stay online until we'll get to general public comment again.
Okay, no problem.
We're close.
Yeah, we're close.
Yeah, Mr. Lindsay says he's a 2-hour report tonight, but other than that, we're close. You're next to me. Okay, so like any other comment just on the tree ordinance at this point? Okay, the motion to close public comment on the tree ordinance.
Motion close public comment on the tree ordinance.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
So we have these comments. We'll send them back to the planning board and we'll see when this comes back up to the committee. Appreciate everybody's taking the time to read it. And Julia, thank you. You spent a lot of time with the planning board and getting through this, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Report of animal control official. There's an email report. It's been printed. It's in your packet tonight. Report of township attorney. No report. No. Excellent report. Report of health and safety coordinator, Mr. Lindsay.
Spoke with Bob Gemmell from the Township Insurance. We are meeting actually in Roseland next July 7th to discuss the restarting the safety program, which we had here in town. Going to offer free training to our employees to help mitigate, liability and exposure to the township, as well as protect our employees and residents that come into the building. So that's going to hopefully get started up soon. Also, I spoke with Carl. He's going to be checking the DPW trucks to review updated first aid kits and supplies they have in there. They haven't been touched in a few years, and they're that's it.
Thank you for addressing that. Report of finance coordinator, Ms. Nelson.
Yeah, so we still have been working diligently and making great progress on the delinquencies from the taxes, the property taxes. Gene's been doing a great job and he's gotten more successes this week. Working on one large property that I know you've been helping out with, Paul. And so we've been doing really well there. Also, I've been working with Jen and I thank her for all her hard work. She's been doing a lot of work on the contracts. She's taken that function over from me. Latest one being the postage meters and seeing how best we can save the town money. It's difficult these days because everything is going up, but we're still making headway on various projects when it comes to renegotiating some of the contracts. And that's about what's going on.
And Gene's waiting on the county and the state for tax numbers so we can get the tax bills out.
Correct.
Paying very close attention to the time frame.
As soon as we get the numbers from the county, we'll have tax bills out for everybody. And again, I just want to point out, so the speaker was talking about it in particular. So when Gene is approaching these delinquencies, like we're talking about zoning, Gene is very respectful of our taxpayers and our residents and is there to try to work with everybody. So if you do get a delinquent notice from Gene, he is excellent to work with and tries to work with everybody. Like I said, we had a resolution on the agenda tonight helping out the residents. So we are there to help, not to make this more difficult. Report by Ms. Coordinator. Thank you.
Well, yeah, outside of the biggie tonight, which was the tree ordinance, there's one small project going on with the land use board, actually with our land use secretary, who's jumping right in. And again, thank you to Jen for helping out, is that we still have a lot of monies left over in escrow from various applications. Not all of them were land use, some of them are just zoning permits, but so there are residents that may have some money coming to them. So we're looking to clean up those rolls. So we'll go back as far as 2015. Tom, I know we've reached out to you to help. If you have anything to add, let me know, but it's basically cleaning up those rolls. Some of it needs to stay open because some of it is ongoing, even though they've been on the books for a while. But yes, it'll be nice to see that cleaned up, and if any residents have monies coming to them, it'd be nice to see them get their
I'll
money.
preface, because we've done this one time before since I've been around, and as ridiculous as I find it, we cannot just reach out to you and say, here is your money. So just saying this here, so if you're watching tonight or you're watching at a later time, if you had a zoning or planning board application, you think you might have money left over in an escrow, you have to approach the township and ask for those monies to be returned to you. So we don't make that regulation.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's the way it works. So as we're trying to clean that up, please keep that in mind. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, report of governing body members, Mr. Lindsay?
Just a few things. County, our hazard mitigation plan through the county is complete. I picked up a copy of it the other day. Currently working with Ken Balcom, Deputy OEM, to update everything in there. Just to give people an idea, since 2013, because we have a mitigation plan in place, we've been able to recoup almost $100,000 of fees of expenditures from FEMA through the various storms. Currently, with Tropical Storm Ida, we're estimated to get back roughly $39,000. Two of those projects are completed. They've already gone to the state. They've already been signed off on. The third one, I'm just waiting for Hector, the FEMA rep, to complete it, send it to the state. That's the one that he spoke with Carl last week on in regards to I think it was the damages to the roads. The other ones are all done. There's $25,388 we're getting back for the cleanup and debris removal, $3,900 for the Heritage Park repairs, and we're estimated $10,166 for the road repairs, the Kremlin Road Grade, and the sides there. That's really about it.
Excellent, following up on all of stuff. Mr. Keith? Steve?
Hello.
There you go. Anything to
Okay.
report?
Yep. I was approached by a resident. He actually made a commitment. He would like to buy one of the benches when you would put them in. Full commitment, full payment on the bench.
Excellent, thank you.
So I guess Tom would have to let me know, and I'll get the residents' information, and we'll go from there.
That's perfect. We'll figure it out. If they want any kind of recognition, we'll handle that. Thank you. Mr. Randolph?
Really, it's pretty simple. On finances, I'm really glad that we've stayed on track for paying down the debt. When you look at the numbers that Jen presented with us, we paid $6,000 in interest with that $160,000 to lower the debt. And even with that much smaller principal left over, we're looking at about $13,000 interest payment the next time we go around. If things keep trending the way they are, it just makes a lot of sense to just be as tight on the numbers as we possibly can. And for big purchases that are coming up down the road, whether it's trucks or not, actually start planning a lot sooner. So we start setting money aside to those respective accounts. This way the public, because I'm talking to so many people, they really are feeling the hit because it's on all corners. We have a small window of opportunity, and the discipline that we apply to not push them over the edge. We're seeing it in different factors. Paul and I probably, we're seeing it respectively in our other passions in public service. And we can do something about that, at least a little bit here.
Great. Yeah, I was hoping at one point we'll keep working with Ms. Mooney is our CFO, but my intent was to eventually have our own capital and investment fund. So it's a little difficult now because our costs go up too. But that was, back in 2017 and 18, we were trying to create a plan ahead, was to be able to fund some of these purchases on our own, to maintain our roads and not take on additional debt. So we're trying to get back on track to be able to do that.
I talked to Jim quite a bit. One of the things that's really sneaking up on us is our fuel costs. As much as the guys are being disciplined and the trucks are efficient, it might be worth, I'll size it up later, but we might be past, say, the halfway point of what we budgeted, and we're not at the halfway point for the year as far as we're coming into between the fall and certainly the early part of the winter. So we've got a couple of things to plan out.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank Tom for sticking with that grant process. And maybe we gotta really dig more for whatever grants are out there for all these other things that may pop up.
Ms. Nelson?
No, I have nothing to add.
Ms. Mooney, administrator's report?
Okay, there we go. So as Judy said, I've been getting quotes for postage machines. I received a call from Pitney Bowes, and the reason we're doing that is the post office is changing their stamp. So the stamp on our machine will no longer be recognized by the post office. I believe it's in 2023. So this isn't really something that, we wanted to do, but we're being forced to do it. So I do have like 3 quotes that we'll have to go over. They're not too much higher than what we're paying right now, but a little bit. So we'll sit down, and go over those to see what the best machine is that's going to fit our needs. I did receive 3 quotes for the cleaning service. There were 2 outside companies, and I did hear back from the school about doing a shared janitorial service with the school. So I got that quote tonight. So that's something else we'll sit down to talk about to see how that's going to go. Paul did have someone come up on Monday to clean the office, which was very needed, very much appreciated. She did a great job. So thank you very much for that. It was about 5 weeks or so without a cleaning company. So it was great having that. Next week, there's, I believe, 4 interviews scheduled for the DPW labor position. So hopefully we will get that solidified and have someone hopefully start soon. And we received our audit. There are a couple minor issues that will be corrected and addressed through a corrective action plan, a resolution that gets done with that. And I believe that'll get put on for the next meeting. And I think that's it.
Any questions?
One last thing I just want to add to Jen's update that kind of falls under my area of HR. She's been doing a great job of sitting down with the staff with the personnel manual and bringing everybody up to speed on that. So I want to thank you for that too, Jen.
Oh, you're welcome.
You mentioned, I'm just going to explain it for residents so they know we're all trying to work together. So our cleaning service, I say suspended their contract because they didn't have staffing, as I think a lot of companies unfortunately are finding. And so we had to go back out for, while that's a bid and a contract, we had to go back out to find if they cannot service us. But we decided we reached out to the school board and they were very quick in putting us together with their business administrator. And so, from my perspective, if we can make it work, I would love to have that shared service. Since the township provides some services for the school, we can work with them in return. to provide custodial cleaning services here. So just wanted to share with residents that we're all trying to work together, especially now when we're all pressed financially. Thank you. Report of mayor. A couple simple things. So last week, and actually, Mr. Lenzo, thank you. I serve on the legislative committee for the League of Municipalities, and the key to that is the chair of the Intermunicipal Affairs Committee. So we review legislation that comes from the state level that may impact us as municipalities 99% of the time negatively, and asking us to do things that add cost or labor to what we do. So it gives us a chance to see that beforehand. There are a couple issues that from an OEM standpoint and also service standpoint that Mr. Lynch helped me out with as we were reviewing those. Also, this week, I've been doing this, I think, for 7 years now. We did it virtually during the pandemic, but my high school has an externship program. And so I had a student with me, a rising senior, for the past 2 days. Usually we do it 2 or 3 days. And I know it can be disruptive at times, but I want to thank our staff for taking the time to share what they do. The student comes to learn about local government and the functions. So I want to thank our staff for always taking the time and being very open and sharing with them, and also some of my fellow elected officials who spend time. And I've also done this with some of our residents, so I'll put that out there. Anybody has students that are interested in thinking about local government, want to learn more about what we do here, we're open to sharing with you in our office and meeting some of our staff and some of our other elected officials. The other thing too is, and so you know, we're Bethlehem Township participates on the Route 7822 Economic Development Coalition, and they had received a grant through the Highlands to look at a home-based business ordinance. Bethlehem Township already has a home-based business ordinance. So when you're looking at it from an economic development standpoint, through the pandemic, we found that a lot of people are choosing to live in Hunter County because they can work from home. That's great, it's wonderful, and it's a point of economic development, but that's not what this is. If you're working for a corporation or other entity in your home office, you're welcome to do that. But a lot of people started home-based businesses, and also it is also another point of economic development, something that may fit us as a more rural community. We've had some local residents start businesses in home, and that have turned into businesses that have grown into larger commercial entities. So the initial draft just came out. I'll be sending that to our planning board for comment to go back to the 7822 to go to their consultants and see. I will say our ordinance seems to be in pretty good order. There's a few things that can touch up because I think it's about 5 years old at this time. But for the most part, our planning board has done a great job in doing that. I want to keep everybody updated. And then the last thing, and Audra Grasso, I think you're on if you want to take your speaker off. Our Recreation Booster Committee is back and functioning. They had a meeting this morning. And we're going to be going back to Community Day, which is now September 24th. Speaking of grants, the Hunter County Economic Development and Tourism Department has a community redevelopment grant. And so any community activity that had existed pre-pandemic that we want to reinstitute, we can apply for a grant for. So I filled out the grant application. I have a letter, but I'm asking for $5,000 for Community Day. What I would ask for this, though, is I do need to state that we had a resolution by the committee, so if I have a motion to apply for a grant, about $5,000 to support Bethlehem Township 2022 Community Day.
Make that motion as stated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we will, I'll send that in tomorrow. But Audra, I don't know if you're listening, I know they planned on some other activities.
Yes,
well.
I am. Can you hear me? I am listening, and we are very excited to be on the Booster Club now and work with the town and get the Community Day up and running. And we have a lot of exciting things that we're planning for Community Day. We're trying to get a tethered hot air balloon, some things for the kids. There's a bunch of stuff going on, but feel free. I'll post my information on the site. If anybody has any ideas, we would love to hear it. Reach out to us. It's myself, Ryan Molchan, and Tara Cleary right now, but we will be looking for volunteers for Community Day and a lot of the events going forward for the town. And we're really excited to kind of get the community back together and make this, our town great.
Sorry, you have a date for that?
September 24th. So thank you, and thank you to you and Tara and Ryan for getting us back on track for some of these community events and getting a recreation program back on track.
Well, thank you guys too. We're excited to be working with the town.
Any questions for me? Then we'll get a motion open for public comment.
The motion to open for public comment.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Public comment?
Three.
So 3, so if you're there, now would be the time to ask.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, so I was asking about the activity on the abandoned quarry on 173 with the truck activity.
Yeah, I say I would say both attorneys, township and planning board are aware, working with zoning and I'm gonna say even state police at this point. So I don't have an update, but we are aware and working on it.
Okay. Okay. My other question was, I mean, earlier you were talking about, I guess it's Mine Road, speed limit is 40. Fox Farm, I think it's posted 25, but is the official number 40 for that road because it's a rural road?
So I'm trying to look up our,
Fox Farm is not on the speed limit.
so Fox Farm probably is 50, but
Yeah, I think we'll, yeah.
it's not in the ordinance. So if it's not in the ordinance, it's subject to the state guidelines, which would be 25, 35, or 50, but we would have to verify where the state designated that road.
Oh, okay. All right, that's all. Thank you.
So to help clarify too, for people who are interested, like I said, I was looking in Alexandria and last night I was in Union and most of our surrounding towns, including Bethlehem, our ordinances are all online. So if you go to our website, ours are under a drop-down tab that say additional resources. And then you can look at, it'll say code 360. If you click on that and then there's a search bar, you can type in speed limits or any other ordinance that you think we may or should have or you're interested in. But if you type in speed limit there, it'll give you the list of the roads in Bethlehem Township by ordinance that have had their speed limits adjusted. If they're not on that list, they fall under one of the state designations. Any other public comment?
Peter Berger, 134 Blackbrook Road. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Ogrodnik. What's going on with well, really, I'd like you to report on all the pending legal cases. But what's going on with the ADS environmental one in Flemington? When is that coming up and what's going to happen?
Well, the case was heard before a 3-judge panel in
I got
the
that.
appellate division, and we're waiting for the decision, which we expect probably within the next month or so. The oral argument, there wasn't any follow-up to the oral argument, so we expect it to be on, this summer. We should get a decision, and that decision will either make a ruling outright or remand back to the trial court judge in Flemington, Judge O'Neill.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought it already got kicked back to Judge O'Neill.
Not yet. No.
So it's still pending.
It's still pending in the appellate division.
In Trent.
Correct.
Wow. I thought it already got kicked back.
Yeah.
I thought the judge in Flemington was going to retire. Is he going to stay on until that case comes up?
I don't know if Judge O'Neill is going to retire before this case comes back, but there's about 80 judges short in the state of New Jersey. So many of the judges, although they do retire, they get recalled. So it wouldn't surprise me if the judges that sit in Chancery or the Law Division in Hunterdon County will be on recall to hear the remand, if there is a direct remand to Judge.
So it could be decided in Trenton.
It could be decided outright by Trent, by the appellate division. It could be. Generally, there's a remand, but we really can't predict that at this point.
If there is, it'll come back to Flemington. And then what happens when it gets there?
So generally, the trial court would then issue an order consistent with the appellate division decision. We had discussed a potentiality would be to remand back to the planning board, the zoning board of justice, the joint land use board. That would be probably my prediction.
That's what you think might happen, and then at that point, the planning board has to go through the whole thing again.
There may be guidance from the appellate division on certain issues that were discrete issues that were raised. And Judge O'Neill would then issue an order consistent with the appellate division's decision. But I would anticipate that, you know, it may end up back before the land use board.
No new information to be presented at all. It's just dealing with what's been done already.
Yeah, so a prerogative writ challenge, which is what was filed, is just based upon the record before the land use board, which was 13 meetings. So appellate division has a lot to go through, a lot of testimony, probably 30, 40, 50 hours of testimony. But it's not uncommon that an appellate division would take 6, 7, 8 months to render a decision. But certainly usually doesn't end there.
Right. And what's going on with the Madero's tort case?
That's being handled by an attorney, a firm that's appointed by the Joint Insurance Fund. So I know an answer was recently filed. I believe it's on a discovery track for 450 days. So you probably have about 350 days left of discovery. And I anticipate documents to be exchanged, depositions to take place, but to avoid any appearance of conflict, they don't have the township attorney handle these cases. They go to an independent firm, and that firm is handling it. And frankly, I haven't had any discussions since the answer was just filed. I would say probably 60 days ago.
Well, because it concerns tax money, I'd like you to keep us aware of what's going on, even though you're not handling it. Just let us know as taxpayers where it's going.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything filed on it since the answer was filed, so it's really in its preliminary stages. I would expect a substantial amount of time for discovery.
Very good. The intent was not to allow what happened last time with a tort claim like this and have tax dollars pay it. If anything does happen, we're working with the insurance company to protect the tax dollars.
Okay, but the taxpayers would like to know. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Teresa, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. I was listening to him talking about the Manini case, and I was just wondering, was there any new development? I think the last time Mr. Ogrodnik had spoken, he said he thought it was going to be remanded, and now he's saying they might render a decision outright. Is there something new that happened, or is he just speculating?
My expectation is a remand.
Okay.
But the appellate division has authority to really rule on issues, rule on discrete issues, but I do expect a remand.
Okay, so, but nothing new, we're still just waiting.
We're just waiting.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment? Motion to close public comment?
Make a motion to close public comment.
Second. All in favor? There no executive session. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great meeting. Thank you for those who joined us.
Blue.
Yeah.
I got an email from our JCP&L rep, basically an email advising about all the current scams going on with power companies.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if you want to put something like that up on the website, just as a hey reminder to people.